Hello, this is News Now from the Belmont Journal, and Lisa Gibalerio joins us. She's a prevention specialist with Wayside Youth and Family Support Network and coordinator of the Belmont Wellness Coalition, and I'm your host, Mike Crowley. Today we're talking about community grief, dealing with racism, violence, and loss following the death of Belmont parent Henry Tapia last week. And this is something that has deeply affected many in the community who are coping with shock, anger, and devastation. So, Lisa, how do we process such a horrific thing happening in our community?
Well, Mike, I think we need to first and foremost acknowledge that a horrific thing did occur, acknowledge it, and begin to talk about it with each other, with our community leaders, with our family members. Reach out perhaps to find out what's being discussed with your children at school. So what the school community is doing. We need to begin to talk about this, express our feelings. And as a community, I think we need to also address the history of systemic racism. Our country was built on the oppression of other people. And I think we need to acknowledge that. But first and foremost, Mike, I would say is to begin to talk, if we haven't already, about what happened and express our feelings.
Let me ask, Lisa, how about our kids? Do you have any recommendations for ways that parents can process the event with their children?
I do, Mike. I've done some research, and what the experts recommend is that we absolutely have to engage with our kids. Check in with them if you haven't done so already. They more than likely know about the event. I'm hoping many families have already been talking about it, but absolutely check in. Not talking about this communicates that it's not important, and it's incredibly important. It is what maintains privilege to not talk about it. You also miss opportunities to shape the way kids think about the world around them and about what happened here in Belmont. They need our information, they need our guidance. And they need us to listen and validate. So definitely engaging them in conversation is highly recommended. I also would say that with regard to this incident, you can specifically enroll your kids in doing something, for the Tapia family. There are lots of things to do, and you could enroll your children to do something. So that's another advice, is to get them moving, get them, purposefully in action.
So I did want to ask you, with regard to your last point, Lisa, is there anything that you would suggest for families that want to actively get involved in some way or help Henry's family?
Well, yeah, there are several things that we can do. And one is there is a meal train that has been put together. There is a link. It's soon going to, I think, be on the Belmont Helps website if it's not there yet. It's also it's been on social media, so you could sign up to make a meal for the family, something you could do with your children and talk about why you're doing it. This family has experienced a profound and shocking loss, and we're going to help them in a small way by providing some nourishment so that his partner does not have to cook on a night. So that's an easy thing that you could do, and you can enroll your kids. Another thing that you can do and sit down with your kids and you could write a check. There is a GoFundMe for Henry, and that is something you could do. Look, we are writing this check to support this family so that they don't have to worry about some basic expenses for the next couple of months. Thirdly, Mike, there are two standouts against racism that happen in Belmont every week. One is on Thursdays, and that is from 4:30 to 5:30 in Cushing Square, where people gather to support people of color, to make a stand against racism. They hold signs, they talk, and it's just a show of support. And there is one in Waverly Square on Sunday evenings from 4 to 4:30. Another standout, another place to show support for people of color, and to make a stand against racism. So those are three possibilities of things that we can fairly easily do to show our support for this family.
Let me ask you, Lisa, if there are any other resources that you might suggest that people might consider or take a look at.
Absolutely. I mean, this is, you could, a simple Google search will reveal ways to really engage your kids in conversations, how to talk about systemic racism, how to define, racism, oppression, prejudice. So there are places that you can go. I'm going to name a few, but there is the Louis D. Brown Peace Institute is a place where you can get information on how to talk to kids about violence against people of color. We have in Belmont a couple of groups, Belmont Against Racism. They have a website and they are working very hard to raise this level, raise our consciousness about what's happening in the world. We have a Human Rights Commission here in Belmont that is also doing good work, and they have some information online. And then there's the Center for Homicide Bereavement, which has been putting more information on their website because of what's happened across our country against people of color. So there are some resources. There's many, many more. I named a few, but we at the Belmont Wellness Coalition also have a tip sheet that we put together last summer. We could post that again, or you can find it on our website. And it's very basic information on how to talk with your kids about racism. So that can be made available for families as a starting point.
All right. Any other thoughts, Lisa?
I would just say that in order to process this heartbreaking event, I would again underscore the importance of getting involved with your kids, getting into action. We named some simple things that can be done. Go to one of the standouts, make a meal, but also engage in the important conversations. They're not easy conversations to have, Mike, but I think it's important, and we show that they're important by engaging with our kids. What do they know about reparations? What do they know about our history? And then it's not a one-off conversation, Mike. This is something that we should be continuing to talk about, just like we talk with our kids about how to stay healthy and how to stay safe, and how important we revisit topics of, many health topics. Well, racism is a public health topic. It affects the health of a group of people. So we want to keep that conversation alive with our kids. I would say to families, if everything we've laid out right now feels overwhelming, pick one thing. Pick one of those things. Go to a standout, make a meal, make a donation if you can. Contribute to a Black Lives Matter cause. Do one thing, and that's something that we can do.
Well, thank you so much, Lisa. Such a gut-wrenching and a heartbreaking thing to happen here in Belmont or any place, but there are things that people can do. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Mike.